Hello and welcome to Lunch with Leaders. You are in the right place at the right time. Well done. If you know someone else who is planning to be here, do just tag them in the comments, remind them. We all know what it's like. It's really hard to get here. But we'd love to know where you're joining from and what you're eating, because it is lunchtime, or what you've eaten. Becky, where are you joining from and what have you eaten?
Well, I haven't eaten anything yet, actually, so I'm going to have to tell me throughout. I'm joining from my home in Birmingham, in the West Midlands.
Fantastic. Shout out if we've got anyone else from the West Midlands, from Birmingham. We have this big debate about where the north-south line is. How would you classify yourself? Or do you always say Midlands for that reason?
Always Midlands. I feel like we are just in the middle of everything. So we would have a north and a south from where we are, very much.
Yeah, I think that's very diplomatic and sensible.
Yeah, definitely. Have you ever been to Birmingham before?
I have, yes.
Yeah.
I live in Milton Keynes, so it's very speedy to get to Birmingham or London, which is very handy for me to see people.
Milton Keynes. I always feel like it feels a little bit American. That kind of, it's all the new build and
it is, yeah. It's a mystery to visitors, but I assure you, if you live here, it's really sensible and easy to work with.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. So I'm hoping lots of you have found us. This is Lunch with Leaders. All children's, youth and family leaders, volunteers, anyone just with an interest is really, really welcome. We're going to be chatting today to Becky Drake from Worship for Everyone about intergenerational worship. Nick and Becky have years and years of experience of not just thinking about this and creating songs, but really putting it into practice in a local church context. So I'm really excited to chat to Becky about it. I just wanted to remind you about a couple of things when we start off. Firstly, we have a new book out. I can't wave it at you because I don't have a copy right here. But Rachel Turner's latest book, Parenting Teens for a Life of Faith, came out just a couple of weeks ago. We did a special Facebook Live last night called Scared of Screwing It Up for Parents of Preteens and Teens, because that's something that we hear quite often, where she talks a little bit about that. But that's available. Go and get yourself a copy from all good bookshops. That's the thing you have to say, but just Google it, you know what to do. And we'll post a link if you like a copy of Parenting Teens for a Life of Faith. Also, just to say, we don't talk about money very much because we don't like talking about it because it feels awkward. But as you know, we pretty much everything that we do for free. And that's because of the generosity of people who've gone before. So individuals and churches who say, I love what you're doing, I want you to keep doing it, and we want to support you. And so we'd love if you found this useful and you're in a position to chuck us some money, but don't do it now. Very unusual request. We have got a week coming up from the 29th of November, and we're taking part in something called the Big Give, which is amazing. They match you up with a sponsor, and it means for 1 week only, you get match funding. So if you give us £1, we get £2. You give us a £5, we get £10. And that is amazing. It allows us to do so much more. So if you're thinking of giving us some money, the message is, don't do it. Don't do it now. But please come back and do it on the 29th of November. We would be so, so grateful. Thank you. So, Becky, let's start off by hearing a little bit about you and Nick and Worship for Everyone, what you do and how you ended up doing what you're doing.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, first of all, for having me. I love Parenting for Faith. I've read lots of books. Used to work with Rachel Turner for a while, so had the joy of sort of journeying with her in our early days, actually exploring intergenerational worship. So Worship for Everyone is the name of the ministry that myself and my husband Nick run. And at its heart, it's a couple of things, really. It's a music ministry. So our heart is to resource churches, families and schools with songs that really, really do unite all ages together. That's the goal. But we've also expanded into just training and resourcing and writing books and finding other ways as well of helping to resource this particular area of ministry over the years. So we're rooted in Birmingham. We're based at Gas Street Church, which has several locations, lots of services. And so we've had the opportunity to sort of explore this in all sorts of different contexts. And I've also just finished several years as a school chaplain, so have been kind of working out intergenerational worship in a school context as well. So that's a snapshot.
Fantastic. Yeah, give us a little wave if you're in an education setting, if you go into schools or you're a teacher or a chaplain. And we love that you guys are joining us as well. I'm really interested in this. So as I say, we're talking about intergenerational worship. And I want to start off with maybe a little bit of a provocative question, but it is, why bother? Why not just have adults worshipping with adult songs in an adult room, and children worshipping with children's songs in a children's room, and youth doing their own thing, so everyone can pick what they like? Why bother? What do we gain from it, do you think?
It's a brilliant question to start with, because actually it's much easier in many ways when we split up, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's much easier because then we can all just have what we want. And actually the challenge is really hanging on in there for the long haul with intergenerational worship. Why we bother? Well, first and foremost is that unity is powerful and unity is biblical. And so across all levels, whether we're talking about racial diversity, men and women, and generational diversity, as we would call it as well, being together, there's something powerful and biblical about that. I think it's a space where obviously we know that we're made to reflect the image of God. And so, of course, the more of us that are in the room together, we're sort of better somehow, more reflecting the image of Christ. There's a biblical power in it. And I think it's a God-given gift. And we know that's what we'll be doing in heaven. We'll be all together worshipping. But also, there's so many advantages. And I think, we forget, don't we, that there are unique things in every generation that we bring in so many realms of life, whether that's conversation, whether that's family. And we know that we are the big family of God. We are built to be a family. And just as in a nuclear family, grandparents gain so much from their little ones and vice versa. And we need all of us together. It's the same when we come to church. So if we take worship for an example, I think children reflect like the heart of David in our gatherings. They're often uninhibited. They've not yet learned that kind of self-consciousness that we often grow up with. And so when they worship freely, it inspires us. And actually, when I know with my own son, I've got 4 children. And at the moment, my son, who's in year 6, will look in the worship at the sort of teenagers, those that are just on a bit ahead of him. Some of them have really begun to encounter God in worship. So they're all, like this, sold out. And he's looking on at them as his inspiration, because they're cool, and when he sees them worshiping, it's like faith building for him. Oh, this must be real. And then we have the wisdom of the older ones and their kind of parental or grandparental role in the church community. And when we're all together, we get to enjoy those different elements of the generations. And then finally, I could do a whole hour on this question.
That's great. We're loving what you're saying. So
but it needs unpacking, doesn't it? Because once we realize we can persist when it gets difficult. And finally, it's a discipleship space. I know that I have grown up in so many different church settings, but I've learned so much just by sort of osmosis as a child, just seeing my parents worship or praying in tongues or whatever it might be, and being in that atmosphere of praise. I've been discipled as a worshiper into worship. It doesn't necessarily happen in the same way when I was just with my friends in Sunday school back in the day. There's something unique about discipling one another in worship as well. So that would be my opener, really.
And thank you, because you've articulated that so well. In one sense, you're preaching to the choir here. Like, we're people who care about it and have turned up. But I think the challenge can be when you're talking to other people in your church or church leadership or whatever, and trying to articulate what that is. You've done that so clearly and so helpfully. So thank you. I should have said at the beginning, we very much want your comments, your thoughts, your questions as part of this. I've got some sort of opening questions for Becky, but we'd love this to lead in whatever direction you'd find helpful. So do type if you've got specific situations in your church, if you've got a general question, if you've got a comment about what you do and what works really well and what doesn't work. We'd love to hear those. Please feed all of that into the conversation. That's kind of where I wanted to go next with it is, yes, this sounds brilliant. We're all sitting there saying yes and amen, like, go Becky, we love it. But in practice, how do we actually help everyone engage? And I'm not just talking age here, but, people with different additional needs, maybe different cultural backgrounds, different ages, people who've been Christians for a short period of time and people who've been Christians for a long period of time. It is this unique and beautiful place when we all come together to worship, but that comes with its challenges as well. So how can we really include and engage everyone, do you think?
Well, it's very hard, isn't it? Again, it is, because those, who are on this journey will know that it often needs a lot of imagination and sometimes experimentation, sometimes failure, and a lot of prayer. And I think, so the starting point would be, I think, if you've got the vision and you're the one with a vision to make this work, it's got to be fueled by prayer and by the power of the Spirit, because the enemy hates unity. So just spiritually, I think it's a pioneering ministry. So that's the starting point. It's got to be covered in prayer. And I think it's so helpful if there's community around you. If it's because it's pioneering, it can be lonely. So again, I think if you're really wanting to embed this in your church and engage everybody, you need team, even if that's just 1 or 2 lay members that really get it and champion you. I think the other thing to start with is saying you can't possibly ever engage everyone. And I think that's a reality we've really seen over the years. And many church leaders, I think, get really frightened when they see people leave, understandably. It's the all age service, I'm just not coming that week. And that can be tempting to think, oh, we just won't do it then because it doesn't work. People leave. There's always people who complain about the actions. But actually acknowledging straight up, no, there will always be some that find this hard, and it might not meet their preference, but we're going to persist anyway, is a great starter. But it will be hard to engage everyone. I think there are a few, though, kind of just practical things based on what you're saying in terms of all ages, and then I'll talk a little bit about additional needs. But with all ages and those new to faith, the great thing is, and I learned this from Rachel Turner back in the day, often they're a similar audience in terms of how you communicate, aren't they? So I remember Rachel saying to me, when you're trying to engage children, actually think of them as either non-Christians or very new Christians, because then you'll be jargon free. You probably know this, you'll be jargon free and you'll be clear, and actually that will scoop up everybody. So I think for starters, in terms of worship, the song selection is really critical, and really thinking that through. And for us at Worship for Everyone, our 2 values when trying to include everybody would be that we are really working hard to sort of elevate children in the room and give them a role, and make sure that the words are simple enough for them, that there are actions, because for those who can't read yet, that will bring a whole kind of language and a way for them to engage. So actually, I really value actions highly, but that we never forget that we're also trying to engage the adults. And actually, if we can somehow, they're like the 2 pedals of a bike, keep those 2 things, that we're talking to everyone, we're engaging everyone. And so we would also, in the simplicity of the songs that we're writing and selecting, we don't ever want to lose the theological content, or we don't want to start just singing silly songs for the sake of it that might be really fun for the preschoolers, but we've lost the adults. So we've got a high kind of theological and also a high worship vision. And I think, again, some of, again, I know I'm speaking to the converted here, but one of the things that we would often say to worship leaders is, when you've got children in the room, don't suddenly drop all your normal worship values. So if we're worshiping adults only, for us in our tradition, we would value highly encounter with God. We believe that the Holy Spirit can transform us as we worship. And often in a church context, you suddenly put children in the room and those values have gone out the window. And actually, suddenly we're just having a jolly knees up for a few minutes until the kids have gone. Well, actually, if we can keep the same values of encounter and transformation, we're going to engage those adults for a lot longer. But we just need to find a simpler language for the children, if that makes sense. So not losing the values and the vision when everyone's together, keeping those vision and values, I think is really key. And then, the simplicity of song, I think framing and explaining what you're doing is really key. I know that's something you guys probably have talked about, but I think there's a real role, whether that comes from the church leader or the worship leader, whoever's leading those times together, of actually casting vision and helping people to understand the value of what we're doing. So, for example, for me, whenever I lead worship with all ages, I almost have a script. I explain every time why we do actions. I'll say, this is a way for the littlest who can't read among us to engage. And, if you find them a bit awkward and uncomfortable, I just urge you to throw yourself in, for the sake of the other. So putting language and explanation around why we do what we do, again, is just another way of hoping to get buy-in and include everyone. In terms of additional needs, I think there are some really simple things that every church can do straight away. Things like having ear defenders in and having sensory toys. in our church, in one of our locations, we've actually got a sensory room. So we're really privileged to be able to have that resource as a little escape. But actually, even just having a separate space is really helpful for those that just are finding it a bit overwhelming. And then again, within the room, I suppose, depending on who you've got in front of you, it's just the sensitivity around language, isn't it? So often language of, you know, if you're able to join in with these actions, you know, and if not, you can receive in your heart, but giving permission to all. And I do think finally, just on that, this is where actually choosing the right all age worship for everyone songs will often reach those who are less able because of the simplicity, the less complex language perhaps, and the physicality, the actions around it. You know, if we get that right, it will hopefully include everyone. Have I said enough for now?
There's so much there. My brain's going in a million different directions. I've said a lot. What you're saying, it's so helpful. Someone's just popped in the comments. Heather's just said, you got me and my kids through lockdown with your Facebook lives, and I would like to add my thanks to that, because my family watched you guys as well. I know we're sort of coming out of the pandemic, maybe, but that is something that you did for a while, and I'd be really interested to know what your values were then, how you translated it to on screen, because I'm aware lots of people are still doing some version of hybrid or an online something in addition, or all that kind of things. How do you translate this to when you don't have people physically in the room? They're going to be watching on a, you know, phone or tablet or TV at home.
Yeah, well, I mean, that was just an absolutely bonkers time. I mean, for us, we heard the news we were going to be going into lockdown, and it was no doubt the Holy Spirit just prompting us, but we just felt straight away, right, well, one thing we can do is we can do our songs from our home and model, you know, that it doesn't matter that the church building's shut, we can still worship with our children, we can still do this, and it can be really simple. And God really did. We felt he really used it in so many households. It's lovely to hear that you were able to connect with it and with your family as well. I think for us, we felt it was really important that all our children were involved. So this really was a family thing. And I think that's, if in any way those that are still doing things online, you can involve children and young people in the leadership of what you're doing. Not only is that modeling something really special intergenerationally, that we're all in it together, but obviously those children and young people watching, they love just identifying, don't they, with people that are a bit like them. I think what we tried to do, certainly in our case with our 4 children who were spanning a wide age range, was help them to be able to lead at the level they were comfy in. So one of our children did the actions with us. One, my youngest, who is so eccentric and slightly hyperactive, would just pop up every now and again with a silly hat on, and, you know, his way, he was just creative. And then my slightly more serious older child would often write and read the prayers, and he loved leading that. And, you know, to just finding ways for other children and young people to lead was really, really key. And I think when you're going online, it's obviously, there's a whole different thing to think about. We'd keep things quite fast moving. And obviously what you lose when you're not in the room, you know, I know when I'm sitting with my children in a church building, they can glance around and there's so much different stimulus, isn't there? They can watch people engaging over here with God. They can look at the speaker. There's a lot that that can kind of grab their attention. Actually, you take that to a screen, and particularly if you're just presenting and you're one person, that's quite one-dimensional for someone to watch for a long time. So I think you need to have a lot more variety, actually, to sort of replicate the fact that there's a lot going on in a room normally with different people. So we would have fast-moving components, you know, songs, prayers, short storytelling. We keep it quite dynamic. I mean, you remember we would dress up all as different characters to tell our Bible stories, and then try and still have that level of interaction, just as you're doing here now. I think where possible, that's wonderful. So there's still that sense of community, and people can feel like, I mean, we felt in that time that we gained a whole new community. These names would pop up on the screen, and we felt we got to know these families. So it was really, really special. And obviously then just practically thinking about things like lighting and sound are kind of important as well, because if someone's looking at the screen, they can't see you, it's hard to engage. But yeah, we learned a lot in that time period.
Didn't we all? There's some things I can't like watch back, it's too cringeworthy, but
Absolutely.
We were just so grateful for you guys going for it, and following that prompting and serving, because it really helped so many people. And I'd really encourage you, if you didn't see any of those, to go back and have a look, because actually you'll see in action Nick and Becky modeling and showing what this can look like. Sometimes it's very hard. You kind of have the theory and we hear all of this, but when you go to a church and you see someone do it, you're like, oh, okay, I get it. I can see how we would adapt that and translate it to our context. But we don't have to go to other people's churches anymore necessarily. You know, they could watch one of what you guys did online and adapt that, and that would work well. What about the parents and carers? So we're always, and you'll know this from working with Rachel for many years, we're always trying to empower the parents and carers. And you talk there about framing, you know, giving language, telling the congregation as a whole what's going on. Is there anything that you do or that you'd encourage people to think through about equipping parents and carers to help their children and young people engage with the worship?
Specifically with the worship, so when they're gathering,
or well, either with the sung worship or maybe with the service more in general, if you want to wear a broader hat. But you know, just reflecting that we can do a lot as leaders, you know, as the children's leader or the church leader or the worship leader from the front. But is there anything we can be doing that really kind of equips and empowers parents to be having a side-by-side experience with their child and doing it with them without just instructing them?
Yes, I mean, it's that classic thing, isn't it? I do think so much of this with children is caught. And if they see their parents lost in worship, enjoying the presence of God, I think there's massive power in that. For me, as a mum, I'm very mindful of my children when they're with me. And I think the twin part of that is, and I was feeling this last Sunday, actually. I've got my 10-year-old next to me. And on the one hand, you know, I can lose myself in worship, but I don't want him to feel separate from that. So I will often worship with an arm on him, or we'll have a little chat. I like to normalize the worship thing, so that for my children, they don't sort of see, well, mummy's kind of lost in this state and I'm not there. Somehow I'm not, that's not for me. But actually we can still chat and say, do you like this song? Or I might unpack something for him. I learned this from Rachel, actually. Again, she's taught me a lot. But actually just as parents, feeling you can talk through what's going on with your child. The other week, actually at church, there was a week where somebody was really speaking out very loudly in tongues in the spirit, and they were really having some kind of manifest experience of God. And so I just said to my son next to me, is this all right? Are you feeling okay? Does this feel a little bit unusual? And, you know, just constantly remembering that he is still very new to faith and experiencing these things for the first time. And I'm probably the best person to coach him through it. So I think a lot of that talking really helps. I'm also a real fan for allowing the child to just be a bit disengaged as well. A lot of freedom. I think that's so important. And I have a slightly older son who will often say to me, I just don't get worship. Now I pray for him a lot, because I just think a lot of that is he possibly hasn't really had yet the encounter with Jesus that's coming, you know, and that's fine. And I have, as a parent, I'll have certain rules, like we don't have phones out in worship. That's just a principle. But if you need to sit down, I really don't mind. So getting over, I think, as parents, the rules in church for me is really important. You don't have to stand up when we all are. If actually you'd rather just sit down and observe for a bit. And I think as parents, giving them that freedom means that you're not setting up that sort of rebellion to this thing. I've got to do this thing. And continuing to pray for them in that moment that the Spirit will encounter, you know. So they're just a couple of things. I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, that's really helpful. I've got a million questions for Becky, which I can just keep asking. But if anyone else has got any, feel free to pop them in the comments. We've got a little bit more time before we stop live streaming and we go to breakout rooms in 5 minutes. So if you've got any questions, do please ask them now, because we've still got time for that. But yeah, I like what you're saying there of, you know, you're not jumping straight into the boundaries. So Rachel talks about the 6-stage circle, and we'll post a link there, which is where you create a window. So you show how you're worshipping and you frame it, you explain what's going on and equip them with whatever they need to engage with it. And then there's some boundaries. So rather than starting with the boundaries and saying it's worship, you must stand and you must sing and perform, child, you know, there's something of, I'd love you to connect with God. This is what it looks like for me. For you, it might be lying on the floor, it might be joining in with the actions, it might be following the words or whatever, you know, but we're not going to have our phones out, or whatever your family rule is. Yes. I'd love you to try one of those, or for 2 or 3 songs, I'd love you to engage with it, and then, you know, if you just want to chill out, that's fine, or whatever it is. I think it's really helpful to not start with the boundaries, but to think through what those are. So yeah, that's really useful.
Oh, I'm making notes. I mean, that is just brilliantly expressed. Yeah, it's so good. I think actually just another really practical thing, which probably everyone listening would do, but is just having worship songs on at home that you sing on Sunday. I think really helps children as well, because familiarity is everything, isn't it? And I've noticed with my children, if we've been listening to songs constantly in the kitchen that then come on a Sunday, then I can join in with this. So that's just another practical thing, to have worship music on all the time, so it becomes part of their own culture as well.
Yeah, and actually we can forget that. We sing a song in church that's very old and everyone loves it, and is, because they're harking back to a long time ago and is really engaged. And I suddenly think, all my children are under 10. They don't know what any of these songs are. And it's not until I'm in a context where I don't know a song, and, even if you've got the words and you can read, that's an awful lot to process. And then you don't know how the tune goes. It's very hard to engage with a song that you don't know at all and sort of really throw yourself into worship. So really thinking about children's experience, and all the things you've said about just taking the jargon out and using language to frame what's going on, just really, really helpful. I can see a couple of questions coming in. I knew this would happen. There's always a flurry at the end, so I want to make sure we get to those. Any advice for introducing extras like flags, ribbons, art? We have some families who love this stuff, but it can sometimes descend into silliness and feel more like a distraction rather than connecting in with the worship. How do you sort of add in some of those other elements, but keep it worship focused, not a distraction? Great question, Jess.
Well, it's a brilliant question, and the end of that question is the key, isn't it? It's like, if those things help connection, do it. So I think you have to know your context, and I think if in your context having some flags out feels like a release, then go for it. But I would probably come back to the point we've just been talking about, which is let's just set some boundaries around that. Is it that they're going to be brought out maybe for the final song as like a praise moment? Is it that they'll be at the back, but we're not going to bring them and wave them over people at the front, because that might be a distraction? And again, something like art for some people can be just an amazing way of connection in a quiet way, can't it? That they perhaps won't get from joining in with a loud song. And so perhaps having a station like that. I think all these things, I just always think experimenting is brilliant, and then reviewing. And so if people love it, I would be of the mentality, great, let's release it, let's give it a go, let's review. But yeah, whenever anything's getting distracting, you perhaps have to think again about the boundaries and how to rein that in a little bit. But brilliant thoughts.
Really helpful answer. This is from Emma. Do you have an intergenerational team that organise and lead each service beyond the sung worship? And how does that work? Is it kind of week to week or once a month? So I think she's just intrigued about your setup now and where you've got to. Obviously, it'll be different in different places.
Yeah, I mean, we do everything because we are so many services and locations. So I oversee our department, which is called the Worship for Everyone department. So we've got Worship for Everyone, the ministry that we talked about at the beginning, but also within our church, there is a Worship for Everyone department, which is, yes, an intergenerational department, but that contains the youth team and the children's team and lots of interns and the schools work as well. It kind of sits within that. So yes, we do. So across all our services, you can basically opt to go to an intergenerational worship time or not. And that's because of our context. So for example, our 6 p.m. service is very, very student heavy. There won't be any children that go to that. So we don't really have intergenerational worship there, but we do in our earlier services. And we be a team. So between our youth, our children's team and our worship team, we'd work together. In terms of full all in together for the whole service, I mean, to be honest, if it was left up to me, I'd do that every single week. And it would cause it would be a lot of work. We don't do all in for all of it every week. That would be more like every month, like lots of churches do. But we have worship times together, sung worship times every week. And like I say, that would be held between me and the worship leader, really, how we do that, and the church leader. And we're very intentional with the time that we have together. Again, it comes back to vision, to make that really count, be a meaningful encounter rather than just a sort of quick sing song and off the children go. So that's how we do it.
And it's not all or nothing. I think that's interesting too, how you've explained that, because, many churches have a setup where the children are in for, say, 2 or 3 songs of worship, and then they have a separate time. But it very much depends how you frame that. Is it a kid's song and 2 adult songs, or is it all of it intergenerational worship, and we're thinking about how everyone can engage, and having the language and the facilities and stuff for that. So there are options, even when it, you know, looks a certain way on paper. So
and you could spend an hour analysing every model, to be honest, couldn't you?
Yeah, so many options.
So many options. Yeah. I think that's
Brilliant.
it. But I would just say on that, whatever context you're in and whatever time you've got, some churches will have one song only. I always say you can make one song count, and you can make one song an encounter moment if that's all you've got. So, you know, we probably often want more, but the spirit can be there in one song if it's led with that high expectation.
Yeah, and even in that, actually, you know, for a lot of children or people who are working on other things, you know, their attention span is one song. Actually, even the length of maybe a 30-minute worship block is tricky in an intergenerational setting. So you've touched on something there as well. There's one more question I want to get in, and then we're going to chat about some other things you're doing. Heather's asking about whether you would do this differently in a more of an evangelistic setting. So she's thinking about her messy church, where there's lots of parents, but they're not necessarily Christians. They've got an interest, but so there's a bit more of an evangelistic focus. How would you adapt or change kind of any of those principles?
I don't think the principles change actually in a setting. So if the principle is connection with God ultimately, and having a sense of belonging and place in the family of God, they are the same. And the wonderful thing about a missional setting like that is actually a lot of intergenerational ways of communicating, like I touched on earlier, would be exactly the same. You know, we speak to children, we get rid of the jargon, explain a bit more what's going on. We end up giving a lot of confidence to those that are new to faith or not yet of faith. So I do think the principles, but then it's just working out how we're going to express this in a way that's most helpful, isn't it? And I think, you know, just as you said a moment ago, actually, having long, lengthy periods of worship probably wouldn't work. It's a bit like in an alpha group. Often in alpha, the principle is there's one worship song, and it might even feel a bit awkward, but we'll do it because we value it. And probably finding songs as well that will be much more familiar to begin with. You know, if you're doing a messy church setting, I would be up for doing a few nursery rhymes, getting the children singing, and then maybe we just introduce one all-age song with actions that just comes off the back of that and begins to bring that language of faith in. And so I think, you know, the principles, the value and the expectations stay the same, but there's so much freedom and flexibility to express that according to your people.
Yeah, thank you. That's really helpful. And you guys are doing, well, a couple of different things that we're really excited about that I'd love you to share about. So firstly, the Advent journal for all ages, and then also the conference that you've got coming up in June. Tell us about both of those things.
Well, let me show you the Advent journal. So here it is. I've got a little Advent journal here. So Nick and I, as I said earlier, with our 4 children, I think one of the challenges we've found in raising them, and I don't know if any of you would identify, is that when they were very little, all of them, actually parenting for faith at home felt quite straightforward. You know, we read Bible stories, say their bedtime prayers, and you know, they're little sponges, and we'll sing our worship songs around the house. And then we've hit what I'm calling the middle years. So as our children, and actually there were Bibles like the Action Bible and stuff as well that have been brilliant for our kids at sort of 8, 9, 10-ish. Now, as my daughter's getting to 15 and I have a son at 12, they're not really ready for the NIV. You know, they might at times they are a bit, we might unpick a psalm together, but they're not yet really excited. I mean, you know, I'm praying that the move of the Spirit just takes them there at some point soon. But there's something about these middle years. And so we decided we're going to have a go at writing a journal. We did one actually a few months ago, and now we've written an Advent journal. And the heart of this is for families and or young people, to be honest, anyone, particularly in those new to faith as well, to have a way to connect with God, to kickstart devotional life, perhaps for some, that's simple and reflective and quick. So do you want me to talk you through it?
Yeah, go for it.
Really briefly. this Advent journal covers 4 weeks of the themes of hope, peace, joy, and love. They're quite traditional Advent themes, actually, to get our hearts ready for Christmas, to just have time to take out 10 minutes every day. And so at the beginning of each week, there is a QR code to a Worship for Everyone song, and that's like your theme song for the week in your household. So we released a new song called Hope recently, which ties in with the first week, which is all on hope. And then every day there is, I don't know how well you can see this, a scripture, a little drawing by a member of our youth team at church, and a little bit of reflection. And the reflection will always lead the young person, the child, the family, to a few lines of writing. There's not much, you don't have to write reams. It might be, something that helps you to reflect on things you're worried about today and give them to God. Sometimes there are drawing opportunities, or you can do that instead. And then every day there's one thing that you're thankful for. Because that's just a brilliant principle, isn't it? And then my son Noah, who you'll have seen on Family at 4, who loves his facts, has researched a fact of the day. It's a fun fact, which is a great talking point for families, just to bring a bit of joy and humour in as well. And so this runs for 4 weeks from the 27th of November. You could pick it up. It doesn't matter. You could start at any time. But if you wanted to do the whole Advent thing. And so for us in our household, we will do this. Well, I'll give one to my oldest 2 children as their own. And then I'll probably do this one with my younger 2 together. And we'll talk about it, either once a week or at the end of every day if we've got time, and just reflect together. So it's a way of uniting around the same theme, but giving a bit of independence to the older children as well. And then as a church, actually, we're using this as a missional tool to our local schools. So we're really excited about that. We're giving copies of this to year 5s and 6s in our area and helping them missionally to think about how using the Bible day to day can be really helpful in their lives. So it's out there.
Fantastic. Yeah, and we've posted a link, so hopefully people can I was going to say go and buy it right away, because I'm a big fan of anything Adventy. Start in November and finish in January, and feel no guilt about it, because
And do you know what I'd love to offer to your community as well is, if anybody does want to go onto our website and order one, if you there's a place for a coupon code, and if you write the word network, 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 and that will give you it for £5. So normally they're retailing at £7.99, but you can have it for £5. We'd just love to get as many out there as possible.
That's so kind. Thank you so much. And tell us about the conference in the summer as well.
Yes, so we're really excited. At Gas Street, we're going to be holding a Worship for Everyone conference in June. It's June the 24th. So if you are interested in this, do get the date in the diary. It's serving 2 things, really. It's a conference for parents and their children to come together to experience Worship for Everyone. There'll be seminar streams where you can do things together, or actually if you're a child and you want to sort of explore songwriting, for example, you might want to go on a stream yourself. So there'll be lots of different options, and then there'll be main sessions where we'll just worship together, we'll learn about God together, but also it's enabling we want practitioners to come as well, because we want it to be an equipping space. More than anything, we hope it imparts something just by being in intergenerational worship. We're hoping that church leaders, children and family pastors, worship leaders will come and realize, oh yeah, it's possible. And they'll feel inspired and equipped to take this back to their own setting. So actually, if anybody's listening and you think, gosh, I would really love to go to that, we're going to be releasing early bird tickets very soon. And the best way to hear about that quickly is to join our mailing list. I think you're going to post the link to that.
There's a link on Facebook now, and we'll also make sure we post it in this Facebook group. We'll get Becky to send the details over and keep you updated on that. I know it's been a little while and you've gained, experience and lots of things in the meantime, but I went to one of the Worship for Everyone conferences years ago, and just being in a room, seeing you guys, just modeling how to do that and all ages engaging was so powerful and so helpful. So I'd really encourage you to go to that if you can. So thank you so much. We are going to call it a day there, because we could go on forever, and work out what this looks like for you in your local church setting. So if that's been enough for you and you just want to turn off Facebook now and think and reflect on your own, or with some people in your church context, please go and do that. That's absolutely fine. But what we're going to do is post the links to our Zoom call. Becky and I and some others are chatting on Zoom, and you can come and join us. And we're going to go into breakout rooms and think, okay, that was inspirational and exciting, but let me actually tell you about my church. And here's the you know, one worship leader with one guitar I've got, and the two old ladies, and whatever you've got, whatever your setting is, and just for us to chat through and think through what this looks like in our context, any questions it's raised, that kind of thing. So click on the Zoom link now, come and join us. And also just to say, we've focused very much here on kind of sung worship and actions and kind of the musical side of it. And for those of you who are interested in sort of all age gatherings as a whole and services, and we did a little bit of training on that a couple of years ago, and we're going to pop a link. So if you want to push into that a little bit more, we've got something you can watch. But that's all for now. We won't be back next month because it's December, and we think you lovely people are far too busy in December. So we'll be back in January. As usual, get in touch, tell us any comments, any questions, any ideas, any topics that you'd like. And we would love to hear from you. But thank you so much, Becky. It's been an absolute pleasure.
So lovely to talk to you, Anna. Thank you.
Okay, bye everyone.